And with that, hello everyone and welcome to the CBAA webinars brought with the assistance of the Community Media Training Organisation. They're available at cmto.org.au. I'm very happy to say that from the CMTO this evening, I'm joined by the wonderful Emma Couch. She's just said hello to everyone there in the instant message box. If you've never been on a webinar before and you've never used the instant message box, then I do urge you to please get familiar, because that is how we are asking questions of our audience tonight. Tonight's session being the smell of an oily rag, 10 tips for broadcasting on a budget. But before we get into that one, quick bit of housekeeping. Our next webinar will be 18th of February. It's how to pitch your story to a national current affairs program. That national current affairs program is The Wire. So if you've ever sort of shown an interest in getting involved with The Wire, here is your chance to do so. It is an absolutely wonderful initiative. Now, I'm also bringing up the CBAA webpage. I'm hoping that we've made this information available on the webpage. It's just in regards to our CBAA conference, which is happening in November of this year, and it's taking place at the venue for last year's conference. There it is there. You can look at all my emails. CBAA conference will return to the Gold Coast, 8th to the 10th of November. If anyone has any queries at all about the CBAA conference, then please feel free to get in touch with me about that one, because we'd love to have as many community broadcasters there. Thanks to everyone who's saying g'day to one another there in the instant message box. We had our early arrivals, including Cynthia. I think we have Evram from Sin in Melbourne. G'day. Great to have you guys there. Denise Kuchma, great to see you in the audience again. G'day, Vic Campbell. G'day, Mike Stewart. Hello, Emma Couch. This evening's session, the smell of an oily rag, 10 tips for broadcasting on a budget. Every day, hundreds of stations across the Australian community broadcasting sector seek inventive, creative and enterprising ways to make great radio with limited resources that they have available. If your station is serving your community in an exemplary fashion on the smell of an oily rag, then this webinar tonight is for you. We're going to hear from some absolutely wonderful community broadcasters here this evening. I'm talking about June, John and Tina from 2RDJ, who are all there in the studios there connected together. Cheryl Lowe from 5THE FM, or 5The FM, 107.7, and Jordan Curtis of ROXFM in Roxby Downs. In this webinar, we'll get tips on how to make the most out of what you've got, hear creative ideas from other stations, and have the opportunity to ask questions of your peers on how best to broadcast on the smell of an oily rag. And with that, I should point out that if any of the ideas that we go through this evening, if you're sort of there thinking, oh, I've got some good ideas that haven't been covered tonight, we very much cordially invite you to put those forward so we can have a bit of a chat about them. But I sort of announced to everyone there, Jordan, Cheryl and June, John and Tina from 2RDJ are actually going to do this in reverse order. So the crew from 2RDJ will be first stepping up to the microphone. Now, don't tell me they've disappeared. Where have you gone, 2RDJ crowd? I can't even see you there. What's going on? They've dropped out. I cannot believe it. What are the odds that was going to happen? Well, I guess considering there's community radio, the odds probably very good. Be that as it may, we'll try to reconnect with them ASAP. What I might do is, Jordan Curtis, do you read me? I've just turned your microphone on.
Yep, read you loud and clear.
Hopefully you wouldn't mind going first if I switch up the lineup a little bit, mate. Is that all right?
Sure, why not? I'm ready to go.
I have no doubt that you are, mate. It's now going to give you permission to show your screen. Excellent, mate. The floor is yours. From ROXFM, ladies and gentlemen, please make yourself welcome, Jordan Curtis.
All right. Thanks for giving my little old station some attention. So at ROXFM, we broadcast 24 hours a day, as I'm sure most of you all do, and most of what goes to air is automated. So we got a playlist which regenerates itself each night and keeps on going, because we don't always have a lot of volunteers around, because we are in a very small town. About 4,500 people live in Roxby Downs, and without a lot of retail business around, most of the businesses in town are actually related to what goes on at the Olympic Dam mine. it makes it a bit of a struggle to try and lock in sponsors and regular income. And so we got to be a bit creative with how we bring in money, but it also means we don't have as big a budget as other stations to be able to do what we want to do. But we try and be creative to compensate for that with how we go about operating the station, and trying to find ways to bring the best service we can with what we have. So I've been station manager at ROXFM for about 8 months, and my goal has been to try and introduce the luxuries that I had grown accustomed to back in Adelaide with stations like Radio Adelaide or 3D. Simple luxuries like being able to pre-record a phone interview, which I was surprised I couldn't do when I first got here to Roxby Downs, but it was one of the first things that I set myself on doing, because after trying to set up a phone interview with Damien Leith back when I first started, and it kept on getting delayed and delayed and delayed, and I didn't actually have a program in mind for it to be on. It was just a certain window which I could actually talk to him. That really gave me the nudge to figure out this pre-record phone interview stuff. So it took a bit of playing around and sorting through every cable that I actually could find. Actually, there you go. That's a picture of ROXFM. Playing around with all the cables that I could find, and eventually I was not just able to pre-record interviews, but I also had 2 microphone recordings set up in the back room of the station, and which I want to keep going. That's the back of the station. Bit of a cluttered mess. A very small station, so things seem to pile up. So I want to transform this into like a pre-recording studio, something. Because at the moment, when it comes to training my volunteers, they have to pretend to press buttons in the studio just in case they make anything go off air. So I just, build on what we have and looking through the stuff that we do have to be able to get to that point. Just making the most of what we got, because it is unlikely that we will be able to bring anything new into the station to change things up. So we just got to work with what we have. Like all the things I've done with the station so far, I haven't actually spent a lot of money on or any at all. It's all just been through playing around with just random cables that I find at the station and just familiarizing myself with everything we have, which I think is the real key. Like, because it's you got to work with what you got. And I am the only employee here at ROXFM, which also makes it difficult because in a very small town, there aren't a lot of people to volunteer with technical expertise in radio kit or audio gear or stuff like that. So it's really up to me to be able to learn everything I can about what the station can do and put it to good use. And this setup was using my own personal audio recorder, setting up for interviews with politicians ahead of the state election we just had in South Australia. Both of the candidates who were meant to come in for an interview didn't turn up, so that was a bit of a wasted time, but at least it gave me plenty of opportunity to take this picture. So the lesson being that just take the time to learn what your station can do and take as many approaches as you can to achieve your goal. No matter how dumb or unlikely it seems that what you're doing will work out, believe me, you'll be surprised at how often you'll stumble into something. Like a lot of what I've done with the station has been accidental, but it pays off and works out for the best. Next tip would be to avoid spending money where you can, especially when it comes to music. I'm very grateful for AMRAP's Air It initiative. That's given me, last time I checked, about over 1,000 songs in the 8 months I've been here. Over 1,000 new Australian songs, which has come in handy, and especially when it comes to making sure we hit our 30% Australian music target. ROXFM's music library began in 2003 with a massive donations from the community. So we got a big stack of CDs in the back room. Actually, I think I included that. Yeah, so that big stack of CDs there, which mainly, I think all of it is pretty much donated. But it also means our music library gets pretty dated, and there's only we got the Crazy Frog Christmas album. That's how old our music collection is. So of course AMRAP with Air It don't provide stations with all the music that the public is after. And although it does provide an amazing service in regards to local acts, there is stuff that we need to get from elsewhere. So one site that we use in particular is Play MPE. It's where record labels upload their music for airplay. Somebody at the SACBA conference, South Australian Community Broadcasting Association conference last year, mentioned it in a music directors panel. And so I had to look it up, and it turns out that we already had an account with Play MPE, but it was just one of the things that got lost in the mix of changeover of one of the many station managers ROXFM has had. So so I went back and I found it, and like it doesn't provide everything. You may have to buy extra stuff that you can't find on this website, but there is a lot of music which you can get and source, and it Emma Couch has just linked it in the chat there. So yeah, it doesn't give you everything you need, and some of what else we have to buy extra, which is fine. Because we did have one program, ROXFM used to broadcast the American Top 40 with Ryan Seacrest, which isn't exactly a locally produced program. It's syndicated from Hollywood. We've ended up replacing that thanks to AMRAP and Play MPE, and then buying what's left over. We were able to create a locally produced countdown program, which cost us about, in our first month of broadcasting it, cost us 10% of what we would have been spending on the AT40. So that's just, getting to know what's available out there for your station to have access to and use, because if you can find a way to spend less money on what you want to do, take that option. Just be aware of what's available to your station. And lastly, and I hope every station has this, ROXFM's biggest and most reliable resource is dedicated volunteers. I don't know what makes them so crazy about ROXFM, but we may only have like a max of 15 people. They really do go a long way in helping me in particular achieve what I want with ROXFM. Like just not last weekend, the weekend before, we did a 24-hour broadcast marathon. So starting at 8 a.m. on the Saturday and going till 8 a.m. on the Sunday, having someone in the studio or manning the outside broadcast desk. So that was, I was at the station for the whole 24 hours, doing stuff for the whole 24 hours, which is exhausting. But I had volunteers who were willing to come in the middle of the night or 4 o'clock in the morning to take over. And so it's that kind of dedication which you want to encourage in your volunteers, because it does go a long way. And it, I would miss it greatly if they all decided to up and leave. And I don't know why they, what it is about ROXFM that keeps them coming back. But some volunteers have more than one program to themselves, and it's dedication. And in fact, a few years ago, before I even got to Roxby Downs, I think I would have still been in high school when this happened. One of ROXFM's presenters was kicked off due to some racist impersonations during his breakfast show, and he was so dedicated and so passionate about being on ROXFM that he tried to sue the station and the station manager for kicking him off air. So that's how passionate ROXFM volunteers get. So volunteers, they're community radio's most valuable resource. Trying to get as many people in as you can, because that does help. But for the ones you do have, because I got used to when I was doing stuff in metropolitan stations, it was very competitive for airtime. Not so competitive in Roxby Downs. So just try and, make them stick if they do decide to join up to the station. I think that's all I've got.
Jordan, thank you very much for that. I'll get you to stick around so we can chat to you.
I've also got pictures of my volunteers. There you go.
There we go.
T-shirts. There we go.
All right. And
okay, now I'm done.
ROXFM shirts are available now?
Yep.
That's all right.
Through all good ROXFM stores.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. Absolutely wonderful. Now, hopefully June and the crew from 2RDJ back online. I am just giving them the option to show their screen now. June, do you want to give us a quick 1-2-1-2?
1, 2, 1, 2.
Excellent. We are hearing you, and hopefully you'll just be able to click the button there to show your screen and you will be ready to go. There we go. We are seeing your screen now, and your slides are up. The microphone is yours. June, John, and Tina from 2RD. The floor is yours.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. This is June. Welcome to 2RDJ's presentation. Just a very quick introduction to us. We've been on air since the 5th of November 1983. We're a general licensed station. Our target area is in Sydney's inner west, so we're operating in a very crowded market. Our area has a culturally diverse population, high property prices, therefore large mortgages. It's not a particularly cohesive community in itself. Now, we're taking a helicopter view, and what we're saying is we need to get the basics right. Now, I've titled my session, Get the Ducks in Line, and I'm just going to look very broadly at this. We need to know what we're there for, what we're about, and what we are. So there needs to be a focus on mission, vision, and values, and that they need to be very prominently displayed in the station. Structure and reporting lines are very important. The role of the board versus the roles of committees. I think we all need to aim for efficiency and effectiveness. If we are working in that way, we won't be using our time putting out fires, and we won't have presenters who are annoyed with us or are causing us problems. And dealing with those sort of things all takes up time. One thing I would say is you've got to have policies. We've all got to have policies. ACMA requires us to have policies, but don't over-policy the station. Just aim for what you absolutely have to have and keep reviewing the way you do things. One of the things I dislike is we've always done it this way, and I don't think that's a good reason to keep doing it this way. So review, review, review. So you look at not only where the money's going, but where the time is spent, because that's an opportunity cost. If you're spending the time doing things that are not productive, you haven't got that time to do something that is productive. So the key point of my session is efficient and effective structure. And as I said, constantly review what you're doing and constantly bear in mind, spend your time in the most productive fashion. John, it's over to you.
Oh, it's my turn. I recommend that for the peace of mind that you invest in financial accounting and reporting software. 2RDJFM uses MYOB accounting software, to be precise, the AccountRite Plus for Windows. Accounting software is not real cheap. Our version of MYOB is currently selling at just under $1,000, but it's well worth the investment. To wind back the clock a little, when GST was introduced, the Australian Taxation Office recommended that the small businesses and not-for-profits invest in an accounting package to make their calculation of the quarterly BAS simpler. Originally, I loaded the details of our accounts into MYOB without referring to our accountant. I wouldn't recommend this because you have to get right the first time to make the program work effectively for you. We have an excellent external accountant auditor, and he helped me sort out the niggly problems that I had with my initial upload. The Board of Directors of 2RDJFM requests that I supply the following MYOB reports for its monthly board meeting. These include the age receivables, the age payables, profit and loss, including a column comparing the budget with the actual income and expenditure, bank reconciliation summary report, and the balance sheet. These are easily obtained from our MYOB software. I also supply a spreadsheet listing cheque payments and bank transfers made during the month. There is a CBAA recommended reporting program from CalCSA, I think it's called, which states that the minimum reporting requirement would be a profit and loss report, a balance sheet and a budget report comparing the actual income and expenditure with your budget figures. Details about this program can be obtained from the CBAA. Apparently the program can be added to other computerized packages such as MYB and QuickBooks. Another handy report is a cash flow report. The 2RDJFM board receives one of these every meeting, and it helps plan expenditure into the future. From this report, you can work out whether you can splurge on that new piece of equipment that you would like in the studio. You would probably have to build the cash flow report yourself, although you can get a template from the Commonwealth Government at www.bus.gov.au. The rule of thumb is to be conservative with your income predictions and generous with the expenditure predictions. It's very important to analyse the financial data in your reports, so that you would know where your organisation is heading financially, and perhaps pull the reins in if the expenditure is getting out of hand. It's very important to chase your debtors. This can get out of hand very quickly if second notices are not issued on time. You need to ensure that your customers or your members pay their dues or fees on time to help with your cash flow. If you find you have some surplus funds in your account which will not be required for perhaps a couple of months, the best idea is to invest these funds into term deposits with the best interest rate you can negotiate. 2RDJFM has been doing this for some time. We find that when the term deposit comes up for maturity, we have not needed to withdraw the funds, so we reinvest for a further period, rolling in the interest to the new deposit. And the key point of my little section here is called Understanding Your Financials. Now it's over to Tina.
Thank you, John. Well, as a programming coordinator, I think my involvement here is about engagement and working with presenters. And my focus here for this evening is to talk about engagement, communication, focus, and commitment. So we're, as a small station, as I'm sure other people can relate to, it is about engagement with the community, but also within the station. So we like to include our presenters in some of the discussions or some of the issues affecting the station, and things like sponsorship, and encouraging presenters to seek sponsorship. And what we're actually working on at the moment is to look at developing a fairly basic sponsorship guide so that people are pretty clear about what we can offer, what sponsors can expect. Something fairly simple and basic, not massive marketing, because we're on a shoestring after all. Communication is really very important, and we have presenters workshops regularly, twice a year sometimes if we can make it, but definitely once a year, and we offer them at a variety of times to try and get the presenters more involved in, I guess, the mechanics of the station, the administration of the station, and how they can contribute and how we all need to work together as a group. We are very fortunate to have excellent governance, and we're very delighted to get the award in 2017, and that award has been a great boost for a lot of our presenters to realize that there's something that we do really well, and that we can only continue to grow with that. Other things that we would recommend is to have somebody at the station regularly. If you don't have a station manager, as we don't, or a paid employee, to have somebody from the management who's actually around to develop those relationships with people, meet them, have a chat with them. They can be quite informal, and that tends to build communities and can also diffuse any potential issues. People always want to know that they're being heard. We have liaison officers as well. So our liaison officers look after certain sections of programming. So we have someone who looks after the daytime presenters, the evening presenters, weekends, and so on. So these people are the first point of contact for presenters, and they also meet regularly at a programming committee meeting and then inform their group of any issues that come up. Some of the things we're looking at setting is, again, to keep that whole thing going, because when people are volunteering, they have a certain amount of time to spare and to do their radio program. We want to develop a few more social events to bring people together, because what we think is that if people come together in a social environment, they will be more likely to get to know each other, get to understand a bit more about the station. A lot of the times we find, as I'm sure others do, that when people come in, they might come in with an idea or a concept, and the radio is broadcasting is secondary, and what we want them to do is to meld those things so that they then understand how we operate. So sometimes, you know, people don't really understand that you can't have big fancy marketing when you don't have the financial ability to do so. So that's what we're doing about engaging and bringing everyone in together and having a more sort of community focused type of system here, and also to manage the expectations. So we have at our presenter forums, that's where we give and receive the feedback, and that works quite well for us. So really that's what it is all about, engagement. I mean, as broadcasters, I guess you're engaging with the listener. As community organisations, you're engaging with the community, but you also have to engage within. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, the team from 2RDJ. That's absolutely wonderful. You guys are still mic'd up, just in case there's any other clarification of points that you want to give.
I've just got a slide up which summarises our 3 key points, and we sort of feel if you follow what we're following, you'll be able to chuck out that oily rag, and that's what we all want to do, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. Although the oily rag it's a hallmark of our sector. Who knows if we chucked it out, what'll happen to us then? Cheryl Lowe, I have just turned your microphone on. To our DJ crew, I will mute you guys now, and we'll be talking to you. Don't disconnect though, because we'll need you for the conclusion of the webinar. Cheryl, do you read me?
Hello, Danny. Yes, good evening.
Excellent. You do.
Thank you so much for. I do read you. Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this.
Excellent. Well, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on the other 2 presentations, and I was so pleased to hear that some of the things that you're talking about are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about, and we learn from each other that way. And when I came to the station for about 15 years ago, I came here for 4 weeks, so need I say any more? And I'm still here now. We're just in the down by Mount Gambier in South Australia, and the station is 25 years old. And we celebrate our 25th birthday this year. It's been through good and bad times, highs and lows. And when we came here, we were the low girls, but it had a low at the time. And most of that was because there hadn't been, and not putting any problems that arose there on anyone who has been involved, because everyone's done a wonderful job to get the station to where it was. But because we are in a smaller business community, there is less income, because unemployment is reasonably high here as well. It is difficult to get volunteers, and it's often difficult to get those with the skills that you need. And the question that we had to ask was who was running the organisation. And if it wasn't clear to us, it meant that either no one was or everyone was, and not necessarily as a team but as individuals. And that's really where the problems had come in. So it had really brought the station almost to its knees, if not worse than that. So we really did have to start from scratch in almost rebuilding what we thought the station should be, could be, and needed to be to survive. We were very fortunate in that the very first chairman of the radio station all those years before, he was interested in coming back in, and he thought that it was too valuable an entity within the community to let it fail. So he came on as a chairman, and he was a lawyer, so he had the legal background that we needed to be able to reset things up. So we actually, with his help, set up a better structure, a more solid structure, so that there was the board, and then there was the manager, and there hadn't been a manager for some time. And when there had been, they'd only been here for a short time, and perhaps not with the skills that was needed. And we felt that continuity was necessary to be able to work the station out of the problems that it was in. We've still got no money, but we've done a lot of things in the meantime. And I've always said it doesn't matter whether you've only got $50 as long as you're only spending $49. And that's how we've had to look at things throughout here. We have a very small budget. It's very difficult to raise sponsorship in the area. A lot of our retail people are actually using their own social media, and so there's not the money coming from there. We've had to look broader field and look at perhaps corporate sponsorship and try to do something with that as well. But I just wanted to say we operate 24/7, 5, 6, 7 days a week. We're on from 8:30 in the morning until 6 or 6:30, depending on the programming. Then we go to satellite. But on Fridays and Saturday nights now, we are local right throughout the night, and so we're on 24/7. So the sponsors are having their sponsorship announcements played during the night, overnight as well. We are aiming to being on 24/7 every day, which is 24/7, and but that will come with some more equipment and other things that we have to do. Some of the pictures that you're seeing coming up now is part of what we do for our community engagement. But I just wanted to emphasise the difference, or the importance of having that structure in place. And I know that some of the other people who spoke tonight said the same thing. You need to know who's in charge, and you need to have the same message going out to your volunteers, and that builds a stronger team. And that's what we really base our success in keeping the station running and growing. And with 2012, we were most outstanding station, small station in Australia. 2014, Rebecca was most outstanding contribution to community radio, and we've had some finalist positions since then. And we felt that it just was deserving of this team that we have here now, which is the best team I've ever worked with here. And I say that to them all the time. And that is because we work as a team. There's not little groups going off here and there. They know who's in charge. And it is because of that structure. Policies are important, and we had to redo those policies. And they're not necessarily set in concrete, so people have no freedom or leeway to speak or anything like that. But they do have to be firm policies on the important issues. And they're the things that, of course, you have to work out, or we have to work out in our own stations to make sure we actually know what's important and what is relevant here, what we need to do. We found that we've actually during that time rebuilt the whole station. It had carpet going through it, but had the original chewing gum on it from the high school it came out of 20 years before. So we've rebuilt. We have 3 studios here now. We have a huge CD library, plus we have a library on our computers as well. So in the last 2 years, it's only really nearly 3 years ago that we semi-automated our on-air studio, because we didn't have the technology or the technicians with the skills to do it. And a person from New South Wales lobbed in Millicent, and he rang us up and he said, I was just wondering if there's anything I could do to help. I've been involved in radio before. And we contacted his station that he'd been at, and we said, look, this person just lobbed in Millicent. He wants to know whether he can help. You know, what would you say? And they said, oh, don't let him go. Our loss is your gain. And so that's how it happened. And we welcomed him, and he has spent the last 3 years rebuilding our programming and our on-air and allowing us to go 24 hours, and has just changed everything we do in the studio so that it's so much better for our presenters, easier to learn, easier training, and he just made it more simply. He's now got a full-time job, and he's saying to me, Cheryl, you know how to do this? And I'm saying, no, I don't, but I am learning, and everyone else is learning as well. When we find it hard to find volunteers, what I did a little while ago, we lost our admin staff, really. I'm sitting here as a staff of 1 at the moment in admin, and as well as being on air. And so we did involve all of our presenters and all of our volunteers, no matter what area they came from or what they did here, what their duties were here. And we asked them to do one more thing. And I used the example of surgeons in Africa, in remote African villages, where they teach one person to do one job, and then the group of people does heart surgery. And so I likened our station to that. If they all would do one more thing, it helped it keep running every day. Plus they learned their skills, and the station wouldn't stop if somebody wasn't here, because when one person has, you know, a multitude of those responsibilities and skills, it's very easy to derail what you've done by that person being not available through illness, accident or whatever, or they might leave and get a paid job. Who knows? Some that can happen. Well, they tell me it can happen. We also learned to use technology so that we could, we had our technician get in by TeamViewer, some of those types of things. I now can get into the station, to the studio, and manipulate and manage the studio with TeamViewer. If something happens or something goes wrong, or a presenter gets into trouble, trouble with their program, which seldom happens, but it also means that it lightens the load of your volunteering. In Millicent, we have a huge volunteer demand, and the people who volunteer here work harder and longer hours than anybody else are doing in a paid job. And so once again, it's very, very hard to maybe, you know, attract as many volunteers as you need, because with radio, it's not easy to ring up and say, well, I'm not going to do it for a day or two, because the program still has to go to air. So, so in saying this about our structure, it was a structure with policies. People knew who was in charge where. We gave responsibility out to some of our well, to all of them, but in various levels. But it was really important that we had a change of attitude. And so when our attitude changed towards ourselves here, or, you know, we got the people who'd been here before to change their attitude from being more of a drop-in centre to we are media. And when people say, but you're only community radio, I say, just take the only out of it. We are community radio. The community is the important part. It's not only community radio. So our success in getting to where we are now is setting up that structure and also maintaining the stability. As I said, 4 weeks turned into 15 years. But our community engagement has been second to none, you know, in this area here. And I'm just going to talk about just a few of the things we did a few years ago. We collected shoes for Africa, 1,000 pairs of shoes. We collected 3,000 pairs of bras for Fiji. And we ran a morning tea for 260 people to help raise for funds for people in overseas in Haiti when the hurricanes went through. People sometimes say, why did we do that for overseas? Well, we do it for local as well, but we could see the need in the bigger community, and so this is what we did. And one of the Lions members said to me at the end of our morning tea for all those people, he said, you know, we all wanted to do something when we saw the devastation, but it took the radio station to bring 8 community groups together to be able. So it just showed that what could be achieved, you know, for not only just our own community and our people in our station, but around the world. Our outside broadcast ban been a huge a tool for our community engagement, and we only built that 2 years ago. And once again, I'll just sidetrack a little bit, but I did ring up a wrecker and I said, look, I need a caravan to turn into an outside broadcast van if you've got one. And he said, no, but I'll let you know when I do. And he rang me one. He got one, he brought it down on the truck, and it had gum leaves hanging out the back because he'd swiped a tree on the way down, and it had all the old bunks and beds in it, and it was just a wreck. And I said, it's just perfect. And when our volunteers started rubbing it down, they came in, they said to me, why would it have DFM on the side of it? And I said, well, I don't know. The person's owned it for 15 years wherever it had been. Pardon me. And it turned out that 16, 17, 18 years ago, 5DFM bought a caravan to turn into an outside broadcast van, couldn't afford to do it, sold it to pay some bills. It had been at the beach for 15 years, and without anyone knowing, it came back to us. So it was a wonderful story, and that's been just a huge improvement or, you know, increase in how we've been able to engage with communities. We did 17 outside broadcasts in that van in the first year. We got some funding from the CBF this year to also go out and do 13 outside broadcast to the 13 communities in Wattle Range, so that they all feel as if that's the council area, to make sure that they all feel that they're included. We started doing school programs. We did 9 years ago, we started the White Ribbon campaign in Millicent, and that brings new people into us all the time. And while it isn't always measured in dollar, it's measured in showing the community our worth, our value, and what we're capable of. And we always felt that having the airwaves was an absolute privilege, and we could better the world of so many people, not just through music and news, which are all important, but in these extra activities. So 2 years ago, we did our first outside well, not our first outside broadcast, but it was our school program. And so I developed a program for Year 7 age group, and we ran a 26-week program where they came to the radio station 1 day a week for 2 hours, and they learned all of the aspects of presenting and producing a program. Of course, a mini version, but they still learned how to do it. On the day, at the end of that, we ran an outside broadcast from the school. They had an open day for the school. All the parents came, all the parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, everyone listened. So it increased our audience, and it once again increased our value and what people knew that we could do in the area. They came back and they asked us to do it again. Last year we did it again, and a second school came on board. So in 2 years, or less than 2 years, we've taught 75 children how to run a radio program, but also that 75 children whose schools all listened in, whose teachers all listened in, whose parents, grandparents, everybody else who listened in. Then one of the schools now is looking at turning this year, the Outside Broadcast Day, into a fundraiser, and they want to then donate to us for the work that we've put in. So there's not a lot of money coming in, but it's the realisation that we do this for nothing, and the value that we are to the community. And it's really started to get people thinking about how on earth does 5DFM run? Where does the money come from? And so it is sort of asking those questions, or having those questions asked in the community. One of the things that happened with those outside broadcasts, of course, because we had interviews with various people coming in, and the students learn how to interview. And there we were with, we've had people from local government, we've had the local MPs, we've had doctors, lawyers, policemen. And when you walk into a doctor's surgery, a couple of days after you've had this outside broadcast, and he's just beaming and he's looking at me and he's saying, Cheryl, that was just amazing. I can't believe those students, the confidence. And so you're engaging, and you're increasing the recognition of your value in the community. It's all about then trying to turn it into dollars. But when we did this one in December, you can see now we have a young fellow who went to school here, and he's now a motocross aerial motorcyclist, and we surprised the children at recess time with him turning up and turning the oval into an aerial display. And he actually brought posters for every child and signed them there as well. So it was a high point of their school life, but it was also a high point for us as well, and it was just an amazing day. The first student that actually spoke on the day, the principal came out of her office with tears in her eyes, and she said to the SSO who had helped me with the students, how on earth did they get him to do that? This boy has serious learning difficulties. He has autism. We have, tried everything in the classroom, and he spoke on that radio program today like he had no disability at all. How did 5DFM get him to do that? So here again, we are not only looking at the money and looking at community engagement, but the value and the things that we can put into these young ones' lives and how we can change things for them. So that was fabulous. The other way we tried to engage was making sure we were available to MC. So, sort of went out and said, when you're having seniors month and everything, I want to MC for you and volunteer our time. So you've got an audience again. And they start talking about the FM, because otherwise you can tend to be in your studios, in your station, and not being out there really with people to see what you're doing or have a chance to talk to you. I started emceeing for the hospital auxiliary fashion parades, and that was 160 people sitting there, and all talking about the FM when they left. So that was the other thing that we did there as well. We had our election, as ROXFM just said, and we got all of our candidates to come in. We were able to turn some of that into money. 3 out of the 4 major ones did pay for advertising, and all want to be involved in BFM now past the election with various things that they're doing, various causes. So once again, we're looking at now a meeting being set up with one of those candidates in a town not far from here in our council area, and he's going to introduce me and start talking to their business community. So we've made a good, a good contact there, a good relationship there as well. And the successful candidate is going to be coming in once a month, and he's realised that that is the way that he can communicate to the people here without having to drive around to everybody, because we have 16 speakers in the main street here that play only the FM. We have 3 in a neighbouring town, and we're looking at getting some more in one of the other towns not far from here as well. We've got, I think we might have a poster coming up sometime today as well about our Rock on the Rails. That's a fundraiser that we've got coming up, and we decided some time ago, well, it was about 10 years ago, but nothing happens overnight when you're doing it $2 at a time. But I always thought, because we were in the railway station building and we have the railway lines outside, Rock on the Rails was the perfect name for an event. And so that's coming up on Sunday week. So 10 years in the making, but we are going to have it. This one is going to be a free concert because we want to show the community what our plan is to turn this area into a live music centre, and that concert will be live streamed, and all of the things that we do here in this music centre will be. Now, we haven't built the infrastructures for that, but we've got a low loader coming in, a truck, and we've got, you know, built our own tents, and businesses who had never sponsored the station before and don't necessarily put money into the station, but 5 of them paid for our, just so we can have our own marquees, and we own them now for all future events. So they were happy to do that and have their name on it. And just because not only are the people that are coming and the artists who donated their time and various things like that, but one of the most important things out of it was out of about the 13 or 14 sponsors we've got for various things for this event, there's about 8 of them that have never put $1 into the station before. So again, it was looking outside the square of how can we increase our engagement with community in ways that have never been before. So one of the acts on the day, one of the artists was the school SSO that we did one of the school programs with, and as soon as he knew it was on, he said, "We're there, we're going to do this for you because of what you've done for us." One of the teachers' daughter is singing. We've got an accountant who's going to be singing, who does all our books and that sort of thing. So once again, we're communicating with these people, engaging with them, and what a magnificent day it's going to be. We're just praying for weather. We'd like anyone to pray for good weather on the day as well. But then I rang a person who is a supporter of the station, listens to it, last night and said, "I need hay bales. How can you help me?" He said, he rang me that night and he said, "Mr. So-and-so will be turning up today to see you." And Mr. So-and-so did, and he turned up with his forklift and he put all the hay bales in place for us for our party, and I didn't even know him before. So once again, we've engaged with so many more people. I just talk, I don't know how much longer I've got, Danny, but I just want to talk a little bit about finance and our funding. Look, it is important. I know somebody already said about money, being careful. You know your limitations with what you can do as well. We had trouble all the way through, not with money so much as where was it, but we didn't have anyone who had the skills to actually do MYOB regularly. We would turn up at meeting and we didn't have any financials, but we knew that the money was there and it was in the right place. And this went on for so long that I just wanted to do something different about it, because we didn't have the skilled people or the anyone who could be committed to doing it, and it was just always a headache. And I didn't want to write one more letter to the CBAA or the CBF or anyone else to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got the audit yet, but I will soon." I didn't want to do that anymore. I think it's so important to build a strong and a reliable and a trusted foundation with your finances. Whether you've only got $50 and you spend $49, I don't care, it's still just as important. So this year, when we didn't have a finance person anymore, our accountant who oversees everything sort of looked at me and said, "Well, Cheryl, I'll just show you how to do this." And I said, No, I'm not going to do that, no. And he said, "Well, who's going to do it?" And I said, "Well, I was thinking you might." And so we actually came to a deal after all these years that he does all the data entry, he does all the documentation that we have to be. I still pay the bills, I still do the banking, I know what money's coming in and out, I do the sponsorship, but he does all of that, and I don't have to worry about that done, and it's done by an accredited accountant. So once again, that gives us the respect of the fact that our finances are being done this way. And sometimes, people can think, "Oh, well, where does the money go?" And when you are behind with your financials and things like that, it can put a question mark over your head. And I didn't want that any longer. So that's what we've done with that. I think it's really, really important, of course, to be so open and honest with your funding bodies. If you have any issues or you're running late with something, and we had to do that, and they were just wonderful with us because we'd built a trust with them. It's all about attitude, and it's about trust between the different sectors and the different organisations. I think that's one of the most important things, developing those relationships so they know you're trying. If you do get into trouble, it's a matter of, when I say trouble, by running late and that sort of thing, I think it's just so important to be able to talk openly and honest with whoever it might be that you're getting your grants from. The CBF is probably predominantly the one that I'm talking about, and they've been just absolutely excellent with us. I think for us it's been, it's hard for me to actually decipher between sponsorship, funding, engagement, all of that. We seem to put it all together. When we go out to the schools, we're talking to the students, we're talking to the parents. When we go out for sponsorship, always be open and looking for an opportunity and looking outside of the square. When you think, I have no money, I can't do this, sometimes you have to have the Kevin Costner attitude of, I'll build it, they will come. And this is what we did with Rock on the Rails. We've done it with our other fundraising events. So we've had about 20 or so fundraising events, jukebox nights and things like that. And we just really used what we had and then put these events on so that we mightn't have made a lot, but we hadn't spent a lot to put it on. And it's been the same with this event. We have a few expenses, but not really anything very much. And so we were able to put this on because of the generosity of our sponsors and because the artists are doing this first one for nothing and that sort of thing. But it gives us the opportunity to show the community what we're doing. We had it when we started to say to people about paying sponsorship, and that we went through a time where a lot of people started to say, oh, but your community, you should be doing this for nothing. And I said, oh gosh, if I just rang AGL and told them that, I wonder what they'd say. We still have to pay the same expenses. And so we did have a little bit of that going on. And a couple of years ago, one of our community groups came to me and said, look, we've been paying for our event, for advertising sponsorship, but we think that you should do this for nothing. And I said, well, how much are you paying for your other media? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, what's your budget? And she told me, and I said, well, just divide it between 4. And then that would be fair because you've got, 4 different media people that you're going to be using. And she said, oh, I don't know about that. Well, they didn't like it the first year, came back to me and said, do you know what? We never even really thought about how you run that station and where the money comes from. So we're going to be talking to you this year, and yes, it's fair. So then Lions Club came to me and they said, we're going to be doing some work with them for a function coming up. And they said to me, how much will it cost? And I said, how much are you spending other places? And they told me, and I said, I just want dollar for dollar. And they said, oh, that's fair enough. So they're only small amounts, but it was a matter of educating people too and seeing it's great to do certain things for nothing, but you do get to the stage you've got to weigh it up, how much you can do for nothing when you really have to have income to be able to keep running. So it's about using every opportunity, not risking your money, but looking outside the square. And sometimes you can do wonderful things without any money or with very little money. And I think that's one of the most important things, to think that because you don't have a big budget, it doesn't mean you can't achieve.
Excellent. Oh, wow. Thanks so much for that. That's absolutely amazing. Cheryl Lowe from 5THEFM. And so you will note that.
Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you so much for that. I will just pop you on mute now, but I will get you to, of course, stay online for any questions that might come through. I do note that we have had one question trickle through from Tony Sander. Thank you very much for that, Tony. You will note the title of the session is 10 Tips for Broadcasting on a Budget, and we've had 3 each from our wonderful presenters, Jordan at ROXFM, June, John and Tina at 2RDJ, and Cheryl from 5THEFM. I'm very happy to say that our next tip is from the wonderful Tanya at Tune FM, who couldn't be here this evening, but actually sent me about 20 tips that I could use. Some of them are sort of covering things that we've talked about tonight, of course. I am hoping that sort of everyone's seeing community engagement as something that they need to talk about. But she's sort of given us a whole lot of great points, one of which is make friends with your local council members. And I know this is one that's particularly relevant to stations in rural and regional areas. The reason for doing so is because they may know of grants or funding sources that are readily available to you. If you're staying on good terms with them, they'll think of you fondly when it's time to review their grants, and forming key relationships with them in the community so you can push out the good things that the station is doing. So that's 10 tips there. We might even get a bonus one from Emma Couch. Shall I turn your microphone on there, young Emma? Hopefully you're still connected from the CMTO. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Couch, and you've muted yourself. You'll have to unmute yourself. Buddy?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
How about now? Lovely.
Yep.
Is that good?
I can hear
you. I'm just eager to put in a little plug for the Community Media Training Organisation as a final tip to the fantastic presentations that we've heard from tonight. Little heartwarmers they were. Really makes me keep coming back to you know, why we're in this sector when you think of all the fantastic achievements that you guys have in the face of very limited resources. So one way that the Community Media Training Organisation hopes to be able to assist you is through building capacity through training and education. So we are funded through the CBF to provide free accredited and pathways training to your station, and the way that it works is we do all the admin for you with applying for the grant. So a lot of you would have already handed in your grant application, and you'd be pleased to know if this does interest you, it's not too late to engage in our process. So it is, and Danny's just popping up the application form for you there. It is a competitive process, but it's a fantastic opportunity if you want to skill up existing broadcasters who have had between 6 months and 12 months experience at a community radio station, and you would like to take their broadcasting skills to the next level, then some of the accredited training could be of interest to you. But with the pathways stuff, the really fantastic opportunities that lie there are around strategic planning and governance, and a few of those other things that we've started to get really good at as a sector in the last 5 years across the board. And I know a few stations have were ahead of the game with that, but the management side of stuff where maybe even succession planning, where we still need some help on, we provide training in that as well, and are constantly on the lookout for organisations to team up with to meet the needs of our sector. Really happy to say that we've got a few trainers on the line tonight, a few of our fantastic trainers, accredited trainers, and they do sit all across Australia. So what we do is we bring the training to you. You apply, and if you are successful, and we do have some priorities with providing training to stations in remote, regional and rural areas, as well as a couple of other priorities, then I would encourage you to apply. And yes, sorry, I've lost track there. We bring the trainers to your station. Danny's just pulling up some other images from our website now. We do have free learning resources too. So really fantastic complement. It's complementary to the CBAA's resource library too. So I think that's it. Thanks, Danny, for flicking through our website. It's looking good. And as you can see in the middle there, the middle thing, apply for training at your station now. Get it in there. Get your broadcasters trained up, or your board, or management staff trained up, and it really goes a long way. The results show us that it is effective in improving and lifting the station.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Emma Couch, you little legend. I do know that Tony Sand, I'll just turn your microphone off there because it's doing something weird, man. Not that I object to weirdness on the microphone. That's the whole reason here. Tony Sandy did ask the question about electricity costs there, and it looks like people have been answering him, including Helen from Radio Adelaide and, of course, Jordan from Roxby Downs. Does anyone else have any questions, or indeed do they have anything that they would like to bring to the table there in the instant message box? Please do so now while I go through the summary here of this evening's webinar. And what I will do is I will turn on the microphones for all our presenters. Jordan, you're on. June, you're on. And Cheryl, you're on. Now, you can correct me if I've said anything wrong in the summaries here for this evening's session. 2RDJ, efficient and effective structure, understanding your financials, engagement and communications. And I know there was a bit of crossover there with engagement, and that's because it's so very important. ROXFM, getting to know and getting creative with station technology, cost-effective options for programming or services. And I believe it was under this banner that you discussed Play MPE, Jordan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. For my little bits of community radio that I dabble in, I got involved in that the other week. And it's looking the good so far. I think what would be really wonderful is if there was sort of a retroactive way where you could do that and go back through the archives of old record labels. I imagine that would be... Yeah, it
would be nice.
Yeah, that would be... I think that would take...
But the bonus is they also do they offer clean edits of the songs as well, which comes in handy.
Yes, it does indeed. It's a very good point. I think the dream would sort of be to see if there was a way for stations to populate their record libraries with digital versions that were sourced legitimately from record labels. That's a whole lot of blue sky thinking there, but you know, if you don't have these dreams, you'll never achieve them. And also make
just sign up to as many email lists as you can of record labels and whatnot, and hope they send you free copies.
And Tony Sands there did point out that AMRAP is also great. You better believe it's great. And they're in regards to retroactively being able to populate your music library. Please note that sort of all of the AMRAP ERIC content from when it began, as soon as you sign up, you're able to access all of that stuff. So there is great Australian content there from what I would suggest would be the last 8 years. That might be another thing that we need to do. A couple of things that Play MPE is a marketing tool for record companies from Peter Gill. I would suggest that you're absolutely right, Peter. And Play MPE is for new releases. They only want us to use the songs for 12 months. I didn't know about that. I should have read the fine print with Play MPE. Just to get you something there in the meantime. And Cheryl from VFM, 5VFM, structure of the station, community outreach, and outsourcing financial responsibilities. And, of course, the tip that we received from Tanya at Tune FM in regards to making friends with your local council members. I'll get some final thoughts from all of us. Anyone there from 2RDJ, any final thoughts there from the crew, June, John and Tina?
A couple of things that I would say, and that's make friends with your suppliers. Because if you get really good terms with them, you can often negotiate a discount.
Excellent. Cheryl, any final thoughts? Oh, sorry, go on.
Yes.
I'm just going to say another one.
Oh, yeah, June, I'll leave the floor to you.
Another one is make friends with your local politicians. Now, people have talked about their local council members, but your local MP, state and federal, they can also be very useful to you. And they often have access to funds if you want a small grant for something. And they're also very good site, because let's face it, the precursor of fundraising is friend raising. And that's something very important for us to all remember.
Excellent. All right then. Oh, okay. Cheryl, final thoughts from you?
Yes, a couple. With the our MPs, we have our MP who has just been elected opening our event on Sunday week, and we have the Deputy Mayor from Local Council coming in as a guest speaker as well, just to congratulate us on what a great job we're doing on the day, hopefully, if it turns out really well. So we do include those things as well. As talking about power, a few years ago when it looked as if it was going to be more difficult than ever to raise sponsorship, I started to look at it from the other angle, and that was how could we save money and still progress. And so we actually put solar power on the roof. We had the perfect roof for it. We were able to do a deal with Rotary actually gave us $2,000 towards it because they could see it was an ongoing benefit. And then we were able to do a deal with a local company that we would only pay for the power, and we did a contra deal for his labour. And so we were able to save between $2,000 and $3,000 a year on our power, which was a lot for us. And it's 2,000, 3,000 raffle tickets we don't have to sell necessarily for that, or it can be used somewhere else. So we were looking at other ways of saving the money if we couldn't make the money. And I think that's what we've been doing here at DFM so much is, okay, how can we, reduce it without, but still progress, without having to go without the things that we need and our volunteers need, and still progress into being a really vital part of our community.
Excellent. All right then, and final thoughts from Jordan Curtis of ROXFM.
Well, in terms of money saving, you can do what the ROXFM board did 8 months ago and hire someone fresh in their career, like myself. I was 22 when they hired me, and that saved them, having to pay me as if I was more experienced, if I'm the most expensive thing that the station puts money towards. So, hire young, give the younger people some experience because it's also cheaper to employ them.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thanks very much for that, Jordan. And indeed, thank you to all of our presenters for sacrificing your time and knowledge here this evening. Thanks very much to everyone for attending. Hopefully, sort of we've the follow-up with webinars, we've been a bit more proactive in regards to that, and we'll start sort of sending out information tomorrow morning in regards to this. I note there's some interesting conversations there in the instant message box between Tony, Peter, and whatnot. I am just going to put in my email address there because I'll have to close out of the old session here soon, but sort of any concerns and anything that anyone has, please put them in there. I noticed a lot of chats there too in regards to solar panels, which is really interesting stuff, and I would suggest would probably be a webinar in itself. I would suggest probably even formats like Play MPE, and what was the other? Oh, I did notice someone put in a link there to another website, sbamusic.com.au. Latest releases each month plus a back catalogue from different decades. That's from Mike Stewart. Yeah, very interesting stuff. This will all need to be investigated a whole lot more. But I better let you guys get all out of here. Thanks once again to Jordan, Cheryl, June, John, and Tina, all wonderful people representing wonderful stations, ROXFM, 5DFM, and 2RDJ. Our next webinar will be 18th of April, how to pitch your story to a national current affairs program. If you're interested in getting involved with The Wire, that's independent news and current affairs, then please join us for that webinar. Registration available via the CBAA website. What is not listed there is the fact that our next webinar is generally the webinars are on the last Wednesday of the month. The last Wednesday of April is, of course, Anzac Day, so we won't be having a webinar that day. But fortunately, there's 5 Wednesdays in May. So on May the 2nd, we'll have the webinar that's going to follow, how to pitch your story to a national current affairs program. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us here. I better let you get out of here because we've already gone over time. I've got my email address up there. Plenty of stuff to talk about. I will attempt to connect everyone in regards to this evening's webinar via emails that will be sent out tomorrow. I wish you all a happy Easter on behalf of the CBAA and, of course, Emma at the CMTO. I hope you don't mind me speaking on your behalf. This is Danny Shively signing off. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. CBAA Webinars.